Hello and welcome back to yet another interesting video on this channel. In today's video, we'll learn to run Python code from your Rust application. Before we start and dive into it, one might think, hey, when would I need such a utility, such an interoperability when my Rust code needs to talk to my Python code? So software engineering is not about just building, modern tools or applications with modern languages. At times, you're working for organization, enterprises, big tech, orgs, where you have some legacy code or application in old languages like Python, C, C++, and then you want some part of your application now to be migrated to a modern language, maybe some performance critical stuff to modern language, maybe like Rust, Go, Kotlin. But then you need interoperability to be able to use your legacy code. So that's a common problem which is mostly solved when you are when you want to use modern languages along with some legacy modules, or you want to uh, you know leverage the Python libraries. As we know, in this day and age of data science and AI, Python has a very rich ecosystem when it comes to machine learning, web scraping, data science, image processing, and so on. So maybe you want to reuse that stuff or do certain stuff in Python, and then the heavy lifting what happens in Rust, or the complex, or I would say CPU intensive stuff happens in Rust. And then you also might want to enjoy Rust or Python for rapid prototyping. So these could be some of those use cases when you would want to use such a tool or library. So without further ado, let's dive into it and let's see how can we write our basic Python application and then communicate through our Rust. First of all, make sure you have Rust and Python installed on your machine, and then we need a basic cargo project. And the crate that we'll be using is Pyo3. So it's a Rust library that lets Rust talk to Python, basically run Python code, call Python functions, or use Python libraries directly from Rust, which we'll see in a minute. How it works, we'll look at it in a bit, but first let's try to code something, understand how it works, and then we'll see behind the scenes. So right here, we'll build our first Hello World Python application, which runs through Rust. So we'll just say Python and with GIL, or global interpreter lock, and then right here we'll add our Python code. So py.run, and we need to as you can see, pass our code, globals or locals, which we'll see in a minute. So for now, let's pass global and locals as none. And right here, we'll add our code. So let's say the code that we add is just print in the Python style. We want to print hello from Python. That's all that we need for now. So we have our very basic Python code, and at the end, we just return OK. So what this program does is, when we execute our Rust code, it executes our main function and returns a Py result. The Py result is returned from here. So what happens is, we try to acquire global interpreter lock, and once it's acquired, the run is basically responsible for running your Python code. So right here, it just prints, and then there's nothing else to execute. So the Python execution finishes, and it returns control back to our main, which is Rust, and then the Rust program finishes. And we execute our program for the very first time. Boom, here you go, we get hello from Python, which is something we have in our current Python code. Now let's extend it a little, and we try to pass some variable from Rust and then see if we can use those variables in Python. Let's look at another example. Now we have a name in Rust, and we try to pass it to Python program and then print or use inside Python. So we have name as semicolon. We can pass strings, teachers, arrays, whatever we want, but the only way for us is to pass as locals or globals. Now, as the name suggests, actually locals and globals both are dictionaries, pydict, that you have to pass. So as you can see, we are creating a new dictionary and we are passing. And as the name suggests, global is like long-lived, accessible everywhere in that context. But locals are more like temporary, limited, to the code that you are running. So right now we just pass it in local and then we just print it. Let's run our code. And there you go. We get something printed in Python, but the name is passed in Rust, as we can see right here. Another interesting use case one might have is pass your variable to Python and then get the updated value from Python. So right here we have a mutable x as 10. We pass it in locals to Python. We increment it by 5. Then once the program has executed, we try to get our local back, and once we get it back, we set it in x. And at the end, we should get an updated value in Rust, which is 15. And here you go, we run our application. Boom, we have our updated value in Rust as 15. Let's look at another interesting example, or I would say one possible real-world case when we would want to use Python packages. So right here, instead of just passing along the variables, printing and stuff, we have a string in Python and we encode into base64. Now this RET will be automatically set inside your locals dictionary, and then you can just get it from your locals and use it or print it in your Rust code. So this is a very common use case, let me tell you. This is something that you would want to do because Python has tons of libraries or packages that you can use for doing literally anything that you want. So yeah, let's test this. Let's run our application, and there you go, we have base64 bytes from Python. And here's how your execution with Pyo3 looks like. You have your Rust main function starts, and it tries to acquire global interpreter lock. What exactly is GIL, or global interpreter lock? It's a mutex lock that protects access to the Python objects. So Python's memory management, like reference counting, is not thread safe. So GIL ensures only one thread executes the Python bytecode at a time. And why it exists is basically to prevent race conditions when multiple threads manipulate Python objects. So makes the CPython interpreter simpler and safer to implement. So without it, things like lists or dictionaries could get corrupted if accessed concurrently. And how it affects your Rust to Python. So when you call Python with GIL, something that we just look at in your Rust code, Rust acquires the global interpreter lock so Python can safely execute. Now Python code runs exclusively while holding the lock. When the block ends, GIL is released, letting other threads to run the Python code. So this all is something that we just discussed. You have your GIL, then you have your Python interpreter, which is initialized and runs your code, and then basically prints whatever your result is, executes and finishes the Python execution. And then you just have your guild released and Rust main function continues or ends based on your implementation. Pretty straightforward. And now if you are someone who thinks about performance, then you might think, hey, is it efficient? Is it good? Then it is good if you have very few executions across the language, or basically you are not doing it always in your Rust code. If you want to always call Python from Rust, then something is wrong in your design. But otherwise, if the calls are very few occasional, then it's fine. Because and why occasional calls are fine, because every time you run, you have this Python with GIL, which basically calls the acquire a GIL or GIL, which has some override, obviously, and then crossing the Rust Python boundary, type conversion, PyDict allocations, basically all the extra cost that we just saw and visualized. And one of calls like the base64 examples is fine. The thousandth per second would be slower than the pure Rust. So obviously you would want to have some balance, but again, it provides you a utility to use. That's it for this video, guys. I hope you guys understand, learn something new. If you do, like the video, share with your friends. I'll catch you guys in another video with another interesting topic. Until then,